Hello folks, so what we're going to talk about in this video are going to be different structures associated with prokaryotic cells. If you remember back to your introductory biology class, you had to memorize all of those organelles that are associated with eukaryotic cells. Things like the nucleus, the mitochondria, the Golgi apparatus, the endoplasmic reticulum. All right, those are components that are found in all eukaryotic cells. All right. We're going to kind of do the same thing here with prokaryotic cells, with bacteria. The good news for you is there are a lot fewer structures that are associated with prokaryotic cells as compared to eukaryotic cells, because remember, prokaryotic cells do not have any organelles. All right, that's one of the key distinguishing features associated with prokaryotic cells. All right. So I'm going to try and color code this a little bit because I'm going to start out with the prokaryotic structures that are going to be found in all bacteria. So these are going to be structures all bacteria have to have. All right. In order to be a cell, we have to have a cell membrane. All right. You have to have something that encloses the bacteria. Okay. We've got to have something inside. That stuff inside is going to be the cytoplasm. All right. We have to have a way to make proteins. That way to make proteins are going to be the ribosomes. All right. The last thing that's going to be present in all prokaryotic cells we've got to have some nucleic acid. All right, so I'm going to kind of draw a generic prokaryotic cell over here. Keep in mind this is not going to be to size, and my marker is squeaky. I apologize for that. All right, but the line I'm drawing here, this is going to be our cell membrane. So this is going to enclose our prokaryotic cell. Inside the prokaryotic cell, we've got to have the cytoplasm. All right. We also have to have, I'm just going to draw it kind of squiggly over here. We're going to have some DNA. And if you notice, I kind of drew it off to the side a little bit here. Depending on the book you have, you may see that the DNA is kind of floating in the middle. Most bacteria do actually anchor the DNA to the plasma membrane to kind of keep it in a location. It is not surrounded by a membrane, so the prokaryotic cell does not have a nucleus. Okay? That DNA is sometimes referred to as the nucleoid region, okay? Because that's where the DNA is. All right? So we've got DNA, we've got cytoplasm, we've got our cell membrane. The last structure we're going to have, and I'm going to draw them just as dots here, and they'll be scattered throughout the cytoplasm. Those little dots are going to be our ribosomes. When we get to transcription and translation, those ribosomes are going to become important because that process of translation is going to occur at the ribosome. All right? So if you want to think of the ribosome as kind of a little protein factory, that's fine. Okay? That's going to be where protein's made within the cell. Excuse me. So in terms of that, all bacteria are going to have those four structures. All right? I'm going to use blue now to talk about what's found in most prokaryotic cells. Most prokaryotic cells are going to have a cell wall, and that cell wall is going to become important. We're going to talk about that in a little bit because differences in the cell wall can allow you to stain bacteria differently, and that can allow you to distinguish different types of bacteria and kind of classify the bacteria even further. All right, so most bacteria are going to have a cell wall. Most bacteria are going to have a coating. of some sort, all right? And in terms of that coating, you'll sometimes see that referred to as a glycocalyx, all right? So in terms of our cell wall is going to surround our plasma membrane or our cell membrane. Okay. I'm going to try and draw this a little bit thicker so that you can see that there's a difference there. My blue pen is a little squeaky and seems to be running out of ink. That's okay. We've got enough to do what we need to do. Okay. So in terms of that, the blue there, that's our cell wall. That cell wall kind of acts as a physical structure for the bacteria cell to keep it protected from the environment. That cell wall is going to be a lot harder to get materials across than just a cell membrane. And in terms of that, that cell wall also has some structure associated with it. We'll talk a little bit later about the cell wall in detail. But in terms of that cell wall, it's made up of a substance known as peptidoglycan. All right. Again, if we look at the words there, peptido, it's going to be made of protein. Glycan, it's going to be made of some sugars. Okay. So in terms of that bacterial cell wall, it's made up of peptidoglycan, and it's there to protect the bacteria. All right. Most of the bacteria are also going to have a coating around the outside of it. So in terms of that, that's what I'm going to do with the squiggle here. That squiggle now is our glycocalyx. That glycocalyx is there really to help prevent the bacterial cell from drying out. All right. So we've got almost, and then the next category I'm going to call this as is going to be some. And our some is going to be in yellow, which isn't really terribly different from my green. So maybe what I'll do is erase that real quick. Don't mind me. We'll make it pink. Pink's pretty. So some of the structures that some bacteria will have, not all bacteria will have these structures, all right? But one that I want to talk about is going to be the flagella, all right? That flagella is a structure that's going to be involved in motility for the bacteria. So what you'll have, essentially, that flagella will be anchored in the cell wall and will come off of the bacteria, all right, like so, all right. What I've drawn here is a single flagella, all right. With the flagella, we've got some classifications that we can do with if the bacteria has a flagella on the outside of it. If there's a single flagella, like I've drawn there, it's known as a monotrichous flagella, mono meaning one, all right? You can also have bacteria that are amphitrichous, all right? If it's amphitrichous, it now is going to have, ooh, as I squeak going off there, a flagella at both ends of the bacteria, okay? Our next classification is going to be lophotrichous, all right? Lopho, oh, I can't spell. All righty. This is a lot easier with a whiteboard, but that's okay. We can fix it. Lophotrichus means tuft. So in terms of that, I'm not going to draw the tuft off of the bacteria here. I'll draw a little one here. Essentially what you've got is you'd have multiple bacteria that are kind of coming off of the end like that. That would be our Lophotrichus flagellar arrangement. All right. And the last arrangement we have is going to be Peritrichus. All right. Anytime you see peri, it means around. All right. So if we draw a little bacteria here, a bacteria that would be Peritrichus kind of would have flagella coming off all over. All right. So we've got 4 classifications. Not all bacteria are going to have flagella. All right. But those that do, that gives us another level of classification we can use to identify the different structures associated with the bacteria. All right. So I've kind of filled up the board here. I'm going to stop here, erase this part, and I'm going to continue on with what some of the other structures are associated with bacteria. All right. So look for part 2.